Hello, 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 Jordan Sheridan live. It is Friday, October 21st, 2022. I was not going to go live today because I'm very, very busy doing book stuff, but Donald Trump would not let me. So, uh, honestly, I was going to go live on it being found that he had U.S. secrets on Iran and China sitting around Mar-A-Lago, but he was just subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. So I had to add that to the live stream. Let me wait for folks to trickle in to this broadcast before I get going. Please smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people. The like button right under the video. Jesus. I mean, everywhere you look, there's legal liability for Trump. Can't say I'm upset about it. Again, came out. What was this, last night? Yeah, no, it came out this afternoon. I'm corrected that Mar-A-Lago, Trump had classified documents about Iran's missile programs, as well as U.S., I guess, intelligence or operations in relation to China. That came out. What's the timestamp on that Washington Post article? October 21st. Oh, I stand corrected. Excuse me. It came out at 11 a.m. this morning. This Washington Post article, Mar-A-Lago classified papers held U.S. secrets about Iran and China. So that was enough. I mean, that's a major development. And as always, have to be clear that it's definitely the Department of Justice and or FBI constantly leaking these details to the Washington Post, the New York Times. So that came out at 11 a.m. And then about a half hour ago, the official news came out that Trump is being subpoenaed by the January 6th committee with a deadline of November 4th to hand over documents pertaining to 19 different items. So handing over all documents and communications related to 19 different items per the subpoena. I'm going to read some of the subpoena and then having to appear before the committee by November 14th. Which would not be a public hearing. I'm kind of mixed on whether Trump will actually appear before the committee. We'll get to that later. And I have a feeling I know why the committee is actually subpoenaing Trump, knowing full well that Trump is not going to cooperate with the committee. So I'll get to all that later, but I want to give first the details, all that. So smash that like button, share this live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see. Also, at 5 o'clock Eastern, we'll have another stream. It won't be live with, I'm not going to give it away yet, but in my view, one of the most important elections this November that nobody is talking about. So that's going to air at 5 o'clock Eastern. So let's get this ball rolling here. We're going to start with Donald Trump being subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. Colin, if you could pull up the subpoena. I'm just going to read from it. And super chats, always welcome. It's at the bottom of the live doc. All right, you can full screen it. Dear President Trump, United States House of Representatives Resolution 503 instructs the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, to investigate the facts, circumstances, and causes of the January 6th attack and issues relating to the peaceful transfer of power. Pursuant to that directive, we have interviewed more than 1,000 witnesses, reviewed over 1 million documents, conducted public hearings, and vindicated our rights in court against those who have tried to keep relevant information from the Select Committee. As demonstrated in our hearings, we have assembled overwhelming evidence, including 4 dozen of your former appointees and staff that you personally orchestrated and oversaw a multi-part effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election and to obstruct the peaceful transition of power. I'd say that's pretty bold language that he personally orchestrated and oversaw the whole January 6th insurrection. You would think they have significant evidence if they're going to make that claim. So let's read some of this. This multi-part effort included, but was not limited to, purposely and maliciously disseminating false allegations of fraud related to the 2020 presidential election in order to aid your effort to overturn the election and for purposes of soliciting contributions, attempting to corrupt the Department of Justice, including by soliciting and enlisting department officials to make false statements and aid your effort to overturn the election, without any evidentiary basis, illegally pressuring state officials and legislators to change the results of the election in their states, orchestrating any evidentiary basis, illegally pressuring state officials and legislators to change the results of the election in their states, orchestrating and overseeing an effort to obtain and transmit false electoral certificates to Congress and the National Archives, despite knowing specifically that it was illegal, corruptly pressuring your own vice president to unilaterally refuse to count electoral votes during Congress's joint session on January 6th, pressuring members of Congress to object to valid slates of electors from several states, filing false information under oath in federal court. That one, it just came out recently because of emails from Trump's lawyers that Trump's lawyer tried to withhold, citing executive privilege, that Trump's lawyer in writing said to Trump that these claims are inaccurate. And then Trump went forward filing these motions in court that he certified, that Trump filed these motions and he certified in court motions as to the, fake electors and all that stuff, even though he had in writing from his lawyer that these claims are inaccurate. So that's what that's referring to. Summoning tens of thousands of supporters to Washington and where'd it go? Sorry, hold on a second. Can you put the subpoena back up? Colin's actually doing this from his car, so bear with us. Summoning tens of thousands of supporters to Washington and knowing they were angry and some were armed, sending them to the Capitol, sending a social media message to the nation at 2:24 in the afternoon while knowing full well that the violent attack on the Capitol was occurring, in which you incited further violence by publicly condemning your vice president and refusing for hours to disband your rioting supporters by instructing them to leave the Capitol while you watch the attack unfold on television. You took all of these actions despite the rulings of more than 60 courts rejecting your election fraud claims and other challenges to the legality of the 2020 presidential election, despite having specified and detailed information from the Justice Department and your senior campaign staff informing you that your election claims were false, and despite your obligation as president to ensure that the laws of our nation are faithfully executed. In short, you were at the center of the first and only effort by any U.S. president to overturn an election and obstruct the peaceful transition of power, ultimately culminating in a bloody attack on our own Capitol and on the Congress itself. I would take issue with the first. I think George W. Bush was the first president to block and overturn an election because Al Gore actually won and the Supreme Court stole it from him, but I digress. The evidence demonstrates that you knew this activity was illegal and unconstitutional, and also knew that your assertions of fraud were false. But to be clear, even if you now claim that you actually believed your own false election claims, that is not a defense. Your subjective belief could not render this conduct justified, excusable, or legal. Because of your central role in each element of these actions, the Select Committee unanimously directed the issuance of a subpoena seeking your testimony and relevant documents in your possession on these and related topics. This subpoena calls for testimony regarding your dealings with multiple individuals who have now themselves invoked their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination regarding their communications with you, including Roger Stone, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, and Kelly Ward. Those Fifth Amendment assertions made by persons with whom you interacted related directly to you and your conduct. They provide specific examples where your truthful testimony under oath will be important. In addition, as it is likely obvious from the topics identified in the bullets above, we are considering multiple legislative recommendations intended to provide further assurance that no future presidents could succeed at anything even remotely similar to the unlawful steps you took to overturn the election. Your testimony and documentary evidence would further inform the Select Committee's ongoing work. We recognize that a subpoena to a former president is significant and historic action. We do not take this action lightly. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read the rest because you get the point. Actually, I want to go down, Colin, if you can, to the bullets, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. This is on page 5, if you have it. So they're asking for, number 1, all records of any telephone calls, text messages, or communications sent through Signal or any other means, placed or received by you or at your discretion on January 6th, including records of any calls you joined as an active or passive participant. All records of any telephone calls, text messages, or communications sent through Signal or any other means, placed or received by you or at your direction with any member of Congress from December 18th, 2020 to January 6th, relating to or referring in any way to the 2020 presidential election, including records of any calls you joined as an active or passive participant. All photographs and video recordings taken on January 6th relating or referring in any way to the January 6th, 2021 rally on the Ellipse, the joint session of Congress on January 6th, or the riot that occurred at the Capitol. All records of any telephone calls, text messages, or communications through Signal or any other means placed or received by you or at your direction, including records of any calls you joined as an active or passive participant from November 3rd, 2020 to January 5th. For the period of November 3rd, 2020 to the present, all notes, including electronic and handwritten notes, summaries, memoranda of conversation, readouts, or other documents containing or memorializing communications you made or received and relating or referring in any way to the joint session of Congress. For the period from September 1st, 2020 to the present, all documents, including communications sent or received through Signal or any other means relating or referring in any way to the Oath Keepers or any members, the Proud Boys or any members, any other similar militia groups or its members, or anyone who assembled in Washington, D.C. or January 6th for the purposes related to the 2020 election. For the period between September 1st, 2020 and January 20th, 2021, any communications sent or received through Signal or any other means, including but not limited to memoranda to you referring or relating in any way to plans or efforts to encourage state legislators, or other state or local officials to take any measure to delay or change the certification of the presidential elections. So you get the point. They're asking for pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. They say Trump personally orchestrated this whole thing. This part here, 16. Actually, let me go down. Colin, if you can go down to number 16. This part, number 16, to me is what he could possibly get nabbed for criminally as it relates to January 6th, which is obstruction of justice. All documents, including communications sent or received through Signal or any other means from July 1st, 2021 to the present, relating or referring in any ways to the investigation by the Select Committee and involving contacts with or efforts to contact witnesses who appear or who were or might be expected to appear before the Select Committee, including witnesses who served as White House staff during your administration, who served as staff for your 2020 campaign, and who served or currently serve in the United States Secret Service, or counsel who represented such witnesses. The documents referenced in 1 and 2 include, but are not limited to, any communications regarding directly or indirectly paying the legal fees for any such witnesses, or finding, offering, or discussing employment for any such witnesses, and any communications with your former Deputy Chief of Staff, Anthony Ornato, or any employees of the Secret Service with whom you interacted. So there's a couple things here. And smash that like button, by the way. We got almost 200 people watching, but only 90 likes. We need 100 more people to press that like button so we can get this out to more people. Makes a big difference. Number one, I think there's going to be a tug of war between Trump and his lawyers. I don't think Trump's lawyers want him going anywhere near this January 6th committee. And if he does it, they would advise him to plead the fifth. If he pleads the fifth, that does not really help his, narrative to MAGA Nation that this is all a hoax, that you are proud patriots, that I didn't do anything wrong, that you didn't do anything wrong if you were one of the rioters. Pleading the fifth, legally, that's what any lawyer would tell him to do. Trump, according to reports, wants to appear before the January 6th committee. Probably in his mind, it makes it boosts up his narrative that he's got nothing to hide. He didn't do anything wrong. Things just got out of hand, but he didn't have anything to do with what the insurrectionists did. The problem is, if he doesn't appear, if he does what Steve Bannon did, which is contempt of Congress, which, by the way, I did a video earlier. Steve Bannon this morning was sentenced to 4 months in jail. Gotta love the perks of white people that they get. Imagine if somebody else, maybe poorer, maybe a different color, refused a congressional subpoena. You think they would serve 4 months and get a $6,500 fine? That's all he got. And the judge said he doesn't have to go to prison right away. He could go while he's appealing. He doesn't have to go to prison. Stephen Donziger did not get that. Stephen Donziger did not get that privilege. He had to go to prison while his appeal was going on. But he was, a human rights lawyer, an environmental lawyer that exposed Chevron poisoning the Amazon and exposed big oil and won a $9.5 billion settlement against them. And then he was railroaded. He had to be in house arrest for 2 years and then go to federal prison while his appeal was happening. Steve Bannon, he gets to delay, file an appeal before he has to go to prison. I'd be surprised if Steve Bannon serves the full 4 months anyway. So getting back to Trump, I think it's very, very possible that the two options for him is he appears and pleads the fifth across the board and then spins it as it's all a hoax. It's a witch hunt. And I'm not going to cooperate with the witch hunt. Legally, that would be the smartest thing for him to do, because if he opens his mouth, he's probably going to perjure himself. Well, he's definitely going to perjure himself. And that's, I think, a crime, even though former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder perjured himself in front of Congress and no charges were ever filed for that. So again, wealthy, powerful white men who perjure themselves to Congress usually get away with it. But the other thing is, here's why I think that the January 6th committee is doing this. I don't actually think they're doing this. I think they know they're not going to get cooperation from Trump. If they get anything from Trump, it's going to be him appearing and pleading the fifth. I also think they know that he is going to delay and stonewall on providing the documents that they have asked for by November 4th. And this happens all the time. This happened as I've covered Flint and the criminal investigation for years, the Michigan governor stonewalled prosecutors for years, refusing to hand over briefings that he was given about the water crisis, documents, key documents. So definitely Trump's lawyers are going to start delay tactics, start saying that that's not enough time given to them to hand over all documents, text messages, data by November 4th. They might get an extension on that. We'll see. But he's just going to try delay. But what I think is going on here in terms of the January 6th committee is I think they know that Trump's not going to cooperate. Again, he'll plead the fifth. If he comes in at all, I think they know that he's going to stonewall and he's not going to provide all the messages. Again, and by the way, Trump himself was notorious. He didn't email. He didn't use email. He used the phone, but often other people's phones. He'd never left a paper trail for anything. This wasn't just as president, in his real estate empire also. So I think what the January 6th committee is doing is trying to give more ammunition for a referral to the Department of Justice to charge Trump with obstruction of justice. Because I think when it comes to January 6th, the most likely charge, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but just kind of knowing the bare minimum about law, I think unless you have something in writing from Trump, or unless you have something Trump on the phone, something directly from Trump in writing, his voice, it's legally hard to prove that he was orchestrating this whole thing, even though, sane, objective people know he was. It's legally hard if you don't have some smoking gun in the hours that the January 6th attack was happening, that he knew it was happening, wanted it to continue, was happy about it. If you would need something in writing or voice recording of him in direct communications or part of communications with groups like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, other militiamen. We don't know if the DOJ has that. We don't know if the January 6th committee has that. I doubt it. I doubt they have that because Trump, he is an idiot, but he's not. He's usually was careful in terms of him putting anything in writing, and he often would use other people's phones. Now, that doesn't mean that the DOJ hasn't already subpoenaed phone records or the nature of phones, conversations. But I think on January 6th, actually charging Trump with seditious conspiracy, you have to have airtight, ironclad evidence that Trump was directly involved before, but more importantly, during, that he was pulling the strings directly. Knowing that he was watching it unfold and delaying action, I don't think that would be enough to convict him for seditious conspiracy. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think that would be enough. What I do think they have enough to indict him on is obstruction of justice. And why I say that, and this, people are going to have to move backwards. Remember the Mueller investigation and ultimately the Mueller report. And whatever you think of Russiagate, I've been pretty consistent for years that I thought Russiagate was mostly overblown and bullshit. I never saw any evidence that Trump's campaign worked with Russia or any to steal the election. I said that when I was at the Young Turks. I stayed consistent. That doesn't mean Russia didn't try and interfere with the election, but there was never any evidence that, Trump's campaign, this espionage thriller, colluded with the Russian government. Putting that aside, Mueller did outline in his report, he didn't find evidence of collusion. He did find evidence that Trump obstructed the investigation. There was no charges filed because we have some insane standard, or I guess it's not like a law, but DOJ protocol not to indict a sitting president, which I don't really understand what was the point of the investigation if Trump could have never been charged while he was president. But Mueller did find that he obstructed justice, and obstructed the investigation. So in this case, the January 6th committee has already said we have, as the investigation was going on, we've uncovered efforts by Trump to obstruct the investigation, to get to witnesses, to get them not to cooperate, to get them to recant the stories or testimony they gave. Specifically, Trump tried to influence Cassidy Hutchinson, who was the former aide and the star witness of the committee in the early days, who said that, Trump told his people, let them in, even though he knew his supporters had weapons because they weren't going to hurt him, that Trump actively was pushing the Secret Service and other aides for him personally to march down to the Capitol. She told the story of Trump lunging at the Secret Service driver to try to get him to turn around and take him to the Capitol. Secret Service claimed that wasn't true. They said they would testify as much that wasn't true. Interestingly enough, they never did. These Secret Service agents, they've never testified that wasn't true. Trump did try and obstruct justice. He tried to get these witnesses not to testify or to lie. I think they have evidence. The January 6th committee has evidence that he did that. And I think that is something that the DOJ can prosecute Trump on and could likely win. I think, again, directly implicating him for seditious conspiracy by a legal standard, unless they have a smoking gun, which we don't know about, which they might, I think that would be a tougher sell to get him on seditious conspiracy. I think they can get him on obstruction of justice, which is a felony, obviously. It is a former president, and this is the United Corporations of America, so who knows? Maybe he'd get probation for that or a very short jail sentence. But that is my takeaway. I think the January 6th committee is doing this not at all to, help them complete their report. I think they are doing this. I don't think they're doing this thinking Trump will cooperate. Dean or Colin, if you get an update, if Trump has responded on his Truth Social to any of this, please send it to me so we could show it. If he responds, it's probably going to be unhinged on Truth Social. He'll probably say, why are they doing this now instead of a year ago? Which is fair. I mean, I think they should have subpoenaed him from the beginning. Them doing this now doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I think what they're doing is basically trying to add more beef to Trump obstructing justice and him not cooperating with the January 6th committee. Or let's say Trump hands over certain text messages, documents that they've asked for, but then they find out, like in the classified documents case, which we're going to get to next, that he hasn't provided everything, that he is hiding certain things. I mean, that's even more meat on the bone for obstruction of justice. So really, I think what the January 6th committee is doing is trying to implicate Trump criminally, because they are going to refer this to the Justice Department. I think that's a technicality because we know the Justice Department has already been investigating January 6th and Trump's role. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the chat. Do you think he might be prosecuted over January 6th? Colin, if you're able to, maybe make a poll. Do you think Trump will be prosecuted for his role in January 6th? Yes or no? I feel there's a much, much, much stronger likelihood Trump is going to be indicted over the classified documents, which there is more crazy scandalous shit that just came out, which we're going to get to next. I don't think that means he's not going to be prosecuted over January 6th. I just think there's a much stronger chance he ends up being prosecuted over the classified documents case. But like I said, we just don't know. We don't know everything that the January 6th committee has. Obviously, if they're subpoenaing, all the things that they asked for to subpoena him on is informed by all the witnesses that they've interviewed. So there might be things that they have not presented during their made-for-TV hearings that we don't know about. And we also don't know what the DOJ knows as part of their investigation. But I think proving seditious conspiracy requires a smoking gun, which would mean something in writing from Trump, something hearing Trump's voice on tape before or during the January 6th attacks, Trump's communications or being part of communications with these extremist right-wing groups. And I think that would be very, very hard to obtain that. Very hard. It's the same thing with Flint. You know, it's like, do you think you have the governor on tape saying, yeah, poison them? No, you're not going to have that. Paul says they may convict him. Doubt they put him in any type of actual prison. Well, they might for the next story. But let's look at the poll. So we got 40 votes so far. Kind of close. Yes, 46% say he will be prosecuted for January 6th. 55% say no. So, decent lead for no. But almost half say he will. So we'll see. We'll do another poll in a bit because I think the news that just came out literally this morning, this was scandalous enough what came out this morning about more documents that Trump had at Mar-A-Lago. And then him being subpoenaed came out. So it's just, he's getting it from every corner. And then a day or two before there was news in the Georgia case where his lawyer, it was ruled against him that he could withhold emails from the January 6th committee, emails that show Trump's lawyer putting in writing to Trump that the claims you're making are inaccurate, which goes to Trump's then filing in court, continuing to file in court after his lawyer told him these claims are inaccurate, filing in court false claims about the election, which is a crime to file false motions in court. But if the subpoena isn't enough for you, and again, smash the like button. We got 350 people watching, only 165 likes. Press like, whether you like me or not. We live in the United Corporations of America. As part of the United Corporations of America, we also have digital suppression we're dealing with. We have 128,000 subscribers, but somehow we only get out at the most to 300 people. YouTube often suppresses our channel when we cover Flint, Amazon, Julian Assange, and other things. So please, if you're new, subscribe to the channel. Super chats are very appreciated, but smash that like button, share this live stream. So if that wasn't enough, Colin, moving on to the Washington Post story. This is from the Washington Post at 11 a.m. Mar-A-Lago classified papers held U.S. secrets about Iran and China. Okay. So in addition to nuclear documents about nuclear weapons, Trump had documents, classified documents about U.S. secrets pertaining to Iran and China. So I'm going to read a little bit of this article for you. And then it's Colin. I think Colin dropped off. I'll just screen share myself. Hold on. All right. Mar-A-Lago classified papers held U.S. secrets about Iran and China. Iran's missile program, U.S. intelligence work aimed at China were among the most sensitive materials seized by the FBI. People familiar with the matter say. Those people familiar with the matter, by the way, are the Department of Justice. They're the ones leaking this stuff to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Some of the classified documents recovered by the FBI from Donald Trump's Mar-A-Lago home and private club included highly sensitive intelligence regarding Iran and China, according to people familiar with the matter. If shared with others, the people said such information could expose intelligence gathering methods that the United States wants to keep hidden from the world. At least one of the documents seized by the FBI describes Iran's missile program, according to these people who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe an ongoing investigation. Other documents described highly sensitive intelligence work aimed at China. They said unauthorized disclosures of specific information in the documents would pose multiple risks, experts say. People aiding U.S. intelligence efforts could be endangered, and collection methods could be compromised. In addition, other countries or U.S. adversaries could retaliate against the United States for its actions it had taken in secret. The classified documents about Iran and China are considered among the most sensitive the FBI recovered to date in its investigation of Trump and his aides for possible mishandling of classified information, obstruction, and destruction of government records, the people said. The former president has denied any wrongdoing in having the documents at Mar-A-Lago, of course, claiming in a recent television interview that he declassified any documents in his possession and that a president can declassify information even by thinking about it. National security lawyers have derided those claims. A Trump spokesperson did not immediately respond to requests for comment Friday, but after this article published, Trump posted on social media decrying what he called leaks on the document hoax and suggesting that the FBI and the National Archive and Records Administration were trying to frame him. Quote, who could ever trust corrupt, weaponized agencies? And that includes NARA, Trump wrote. Also, who knows what NARA and the FBI plant into documents or subtract from documents? We will never know, will we? Some of the most sensitive materials were recovered in the FBI's court-approved search of Trump's home on August 8th, in which agents seized about 13,000 documents. Those papers were the third batch of classified documents recovered in the course of the investigation. Boxes voluntarily sent from Mar-A-Lago to NARA earlier this year were found to contain 184 classified documents, 25 of which were marked top secret, according to court records. In June, Trump's representatives responded to a subpoena by giving investigators 38 classified documents. Yeah, Trump's in deep shit. Trump's in deep shit. And why I say this, to be clear, this is not a, pep rally for the deep state. This is not a pep rally for the FBI. I think I've made my thoughts on the FBI, the CIA, pretty clear. But at the end of the day, you can't, those who have gotten on the bad side of the CIA, the FBI, the intelligence apparatus, the military industrial complex, throughout history hasn't worked out so well for them. JFK, Black Panthers, MLK, RFK. So we already knew that, according to reports, and again, this is stuff coming from the DOJ and the FBI, but presumably they have evidence of this. Trump had documents on human sources, i.e. spies. That is sacrosanct to the deep state and the intelligence apparatus, protecting spies. If you've ever watched Homeland or any espionage TV show or movie, keeping the identity of spies secret, it's life or death. Trump had documents about that at Mar-a-Lago and people coming and going. Trump had documents on a foreign country's nuclear program. Presumably, we're learning that might have been Iran, obviously an adversary. He had documents about, I guess, U.S. Intelligence gathering on China. Obviously, there's a huge market in the neocon world for war with China. And obviously, the U.S., economically speaking, its biggest threat is China. That's why Biden, the Democratic Party, have been beefing up their neocon and war talk against China. So all of this combined that Trump had at Mar-a-Lago, yeah, I don't see any possible way that there wouldn't be a full-scale revolt where FBI, CIA, I think they would try and stage a coup if the Biden Department of Justice did not prosecute Trump for having all this, not only having it, but hiding it. It is clear through all the reports that have come out in the Washington Post, the New York Times. It is clearly the FBI has witnesses in Trump's world that have tipped them off that Trump intentionally, and some of the reports indicated Trump was personally looking through the boxes and deciding what to give back and what to give and what not to give back, that Trump withheld certain documents. That's slam dunk obstruction of justice. Slam dunk obstruction of justice. A big part of this investigation is not only what did Trump do, but who had access to these areas where the documents were. Who had access? Who was coming and going? It's kind of like if you think back to the beginning days of COVID and contact tracing, which is pretty impossible in major cities like New York City and Chicago, LA, DC, when people are, a gazillion people you pass. This is like contact tracing. Who was in which room, when, for how long, where did they go after? So there is no way. And by the way, to be clear, notice that Trump and his lawyers have never, in writing, in a court filing, because they have had to respond. The DOJ has issued court filings, and Trump's lawyers have responded. They have not, in writing, alleged that these documents were planted, because they have no evidence that the documents were planted, because, of course, they were not planted. The bottom line is, it could be another country too, but it seems clear. He had documents on Iran's nuclear program. He had documents about U.S., I guess, operations against China. There are reports that have come out that Trump wanted to basically try a trade. He wanted to try a trade of some sorts where he'd give back some of the documents in exchange for documents he wanted on the Russia investigation to further prove that it was a hoax. I mean, to be clear, anybody else, honestly, I even think Hillary Clinton, and she should have been prosecuted, by the way, anybody else, this would be happening. Of course, it's not happening because the midterms are in a few weeks. Trump might be, very likely, is going to run. I think he's going to run at this point, whether he wants to or not, to try and stay out of prison. He's got 4 investigations against him. January 6th, the DOJ, January 6th, Georgia, January 6th, the New York agency is looking into him. Obviously, now the DOJ for the classified documents. At some point, something's got to give. They're going to nail him on something, unless he truly is Teflon Don. And I think essentially back behind closed doors, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and every Republican bigwig has been pleading with him not to announce he's running for president before the midterms, because they know then the Democrats could push Trump as the main thing in the election and in each campaign, more so than they are now. Because if you look at a lot of the ads that Democrats are running, it's basically featuring that the candidate I'm running against is pro-Trump. Well, if he announces he's running before the midterms, that crystallizes even more, and it might get more people to come out that aren't going to come out for Democrats in similar to 2020, because Trump's officially running. So voting against Republicans. So they want Trump nowhere near the midterms. But Trump does not care about any political party. The only political party Trump cares about is Trump. So he might announce he's running before the midterms at this point. But I genuinely can't imagine any scenario where he's not indicted if he had all this and withheld it and hid it and lied about it. Because remember, his lawyers told the people that came down, the DOJ lawyers came down, FBI agents came down in June. They said everything is located in this one storage area. And then Trump after the fact, ordered some low-level staffer to move stuff to the residence. So it's very clear obstruction of justice. Very, very clear. Let me read this. This is from Ryan Goodman. He's a former prosecutor, special counsel at the DOJ, the Department of Justice. Most highly sensitive Mar-A-Lago docs included Iran's missile program, highly sensitive intelligence work aimed at China. First and foremost, severe national security damage Trump's actions risked. Second, closing in on rock-solid criminal indictment. toying around with idea that these documents were declassified is its own national security risk. On that, read this great analysis. David Loftman Law quoted an article making the point that exceptional sensitivity of these materials will count as an aggregating factor in favor of DOJ bringing charges. Agreed. Plus, fact that Trump held out on these despite the visit from the National Archives, despite subpoena. So, yeah, I mean, unless they basically just want to drop the pretense and just make it clear that somebody is above the law, I don't know how they have any credibility as a DOJ if they don't indict him. I really don't. There's also the fact that yesterday it came out. I'll show this. Kash Patel, who was Trump's liaison, I guess, with the National Archives. He was the one on behalf of Trump dealing with the National Archives about these documents. He went before a grand jury on the Mar-A-Lago investigation, which is news that there's an active grand jury right now deliberating on the Mar-A-Lago investigation. An indictment would come from the grand jury. Well, let me rephrase. Recommendation for an indictment would come for a grand jury. The ultimate decision would be obviously from the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. But Kash Patel spent several hours before the grand jury on Mar-A-Lago investigation. Key question, I bet federal prosecutors asked Patel, were you acting as an agent of or in concert with Donald Trump when you described repeatedly Trump's plans to publicly disseminate the documents? Another key question I bet prosecutors asked, you have sometimes suggested you may have had access to Mar-A-Lago documents that you knew their content. Did you? If the answer is yes, it will get Trump into a huge new problem for dissemination of national defense information. Another key line of questions prosecutors will ask Patel, what's this nonsense about you being present when Trump magically verbally declassified documents or had a standing order to do so? What Alan Weissman says here is, of course, spot on. And what Weissman said, well, we know what this is about, testing his story about the Mar-A-Lago docs having been declassified in some secret order. Prosecutors must have had a field day picking that story apart. Shows Trump is target and DOJ is heading towards an indictment. Patel is going before a grand jury is also, as Alan Weissman says, shows Trump is target and the DOJ is heading towards an indictment. I agree. Number 7, note the location of the federal grand jury, D.C., goes to where DOJ is most likely to bring an indictment, not in Florida. So, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see how, at this point, after all this information is out, he had documents on spies. He had documents on other countries' nuclear programs. He had documents on U.S. Programs on China. God knows what other documents. And you're just going to, at the end of it, say, all right, well, this was all for, transparency, but we're not going to prosecute him. I don't buy that. Let me play a clip here. These are some folks earlier on CNN that I thought were pretty good on this. Let's take a look.
Washington Post is reporting U.S. secrets about Iran and China were among the records. Now, a source familiar to this investigation telling the Post at least one document contained information describing Iran's missile program. Andrew, what's your reaction to this reporting?
It's stunning, Anna. It drives home the seriousness of this investigation. I worry sometimes that people perceive this entire investigation of the documents at Mar-A-Lago as some sort of a bureaucratic dispute or somehow retaliatory by the current Justice Department against the former president. That is not the case. The sort of documents that we're hearing described in the Washington Post story cut to the very heart of the most sensitive national security matters. That's the kind of information that, if it's exposed, human sources can get killed, technical access to this essential information can get exposed and shut down, and it makes America less safe. So it's it really, for those of us from the community, the intelligence community, it really sets you back and just shake your head at the idea of that information floating around a golf club.
Norm, we're working to confirm this reporting. If it's true, how can Trump justify having these documents?
Well, Anna, he can't. And there's a long history of very senior government officials who have mishandled classified information, national security information of a much lesser volume than we have here with the former president, who have been investigated, who have faced criminal charges, who've been forced to plead. And the volume here, the nature of this most sensitive information about adversaries like Iran and China jeopardizing our national security, jeopardizing, as Andy says, the humans who stand behind this intelligence, it's unconscionable. And there has been a finding of probable cause of crime already. It just makes it seem that if we're to have one legal system in the United States, that President Trump may very likely be facing charges as a result of this, holding this kind of information.
Andrew, as an expert in the intel field, why would Trump want to keep this material?
That is a great question, Anna, and I don't know that it's one that anyone can answer except former President Trump himself. There is absolutely no reason to maintain physical access to those sort of documents. Whether it was because he felt like it would be important for him to have that information later, to somehow use that information in one way or another, we don't know, or whether it was just out of spite, standing on his old privilege, his old access to that sort of information and unwilling to give it up. We have no idea. I'd be the last person to try to go inside Trump's mind. But the fact is, having that stuff where he kept it was unbelievably reckless, irresponsible, and put American national security at risk.
Norm, there haven't been any indictments related to the Mar-A-Lago documents at this point, but how could this news impact any potential prosecution?
Anna, whenever you're looking at violations, the DOJ is making determinations. It wants to assess both how serious the potential crime was. Again, there has been a finding of probable cause of crime here. But also how grave the damage. So I think as we hear more and more reporting about what may be in these documents and the harm that they cause, the potential risk to the United States, to our intelligence personnel, to our allies who help us gather this kind of information, it just makes the likelihood of prosecution go up. And I do think there's a material risk of Donald Trump being charged. And of course, there's a lot more evidence besides this that we've heard about of his personal involvement with this document mishandling.
So, again, we do live United Corporations of America. I don't believe that nobody is above the law. I still haven't seen one banker jailed for defrauding and tanking the global economy over a decade ago, contrary to what the media has said. A lot of people still have never been come back from the financial crash. Wall Street bankers don't go to jail. Fossil fuel executives don't go to jail when they poison the water, the air, kill animals. Big pharma executives rarely go to jail unless it's really, really obvious. Like, farmer bro Martin Shkreli, who I think only served 3 years and is already out of jail. So there is about 3 different legal systems in this country. There's one for wealthy white men, one for kind of, I guess, working class white people, and then a third for Black, brown, and indigenous people. But again, there's always an exception when you get on the wrong side of the military-industrial complex. For example, whatever you think of Julian Assange, and I personally support Julian Assange, and the people who don't, it seems to be because they've been brainwashed to think Julian Assange is what elected Donald Trump, and Julian Assange sabotaged Hillary Clinton, which isn't true, but I digress. Remember, to his credit, Obama chose not to prosecute Julian Assange. They would not prosecute Julian Assange because they called it the New York Times problem. If they prosecuted Julian Assange, they would have to, basically, they would be setting a precedent for journalists at the New York Times, the Washington Post, anywhere who do the same exact thing, publish classified information, for them to be prosecuted under the Espionage Act. So Obama did the right thing and did not prosecute him. And that made the FBI, the CIA, furious. If you know your history, if you've read about JFK, you watch some documentaries, the CIA is its own country. Let me repeat, the CIA is its own country. And if the CIA puts you on its blacklist, if the CIA puts you on its naughty list, you better start looking in every which direction and watch your back. So after Obama was out, Trump, who was, even though he talked the tough talk against the FBI and the CIA, he was their puppet. Yes, COINTELPRO adds to this, which was the program the FBI used to target, civil rights movement, anti-war movement, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, et cetera, et cetera. But CIA, with Obama gone and Trump in there, they got their revenge. They convinced Trump and the Department of Justice under Trump to go after Julian Assange. Reports came out that Yahoo News reported that the CIA under Pompeo plotted to kidnap and assassinate Julian Assange. And obviously, we know what's been going on. Julian Assange, in my view, completely unjustly has been prosecuted under the Espionage Act and is basically a political prisoner. Is basically a political prisoner in the UK. Jordan, stealing state secrets is not exactly something that the intelligence community needs to exert effort to prosecute. You'd be right if the actual person stole the secrets. Julian Assange did not steal state secrets. Chelsea Manning distributed them to Julian Assange, the publisher, which is protected under the First Amendment as freedom of the press. So you would be right if that's what happened, but that didn't happen, contrary to whatever bullshit you've been fed by Rachel Maddow. So I think that it's very clear, using Julian Assange as an example, that it doesn't really matter who the president is. Well, it does matter because Obama was right not to prosecute Julian Assange. But the FBI, the CIA, the Pentagon, when they have a grudge, it's for life. And they will not just rest with one president's decision not to go after him. Trust me, there was hardcore imprints and fingerprints from the CIA to go after Assange when Obama was gone and Trump was in. I tell you all this because, again, Trump didn't steal Girl Scout cookies. He stole documents about spies, other countries' nuclear programs, U.S. secrets about whatever we're doing towards China. That is, I mean, if they could, they'd put him at the guillotine. And by the way, Trump has a lot of supporters in the FBI. There are a good portion of the FBI that's MAGA. But the attorney general would have no credibility if Trump is not prosecuted for this. And I think the CIA might try a coup. Now, what he's prosecuted for remains to be seen. I think it's possible. I think he definitely is going to be prosecuted for obstruction of justice because they moved the documents and lied to the FBI about where the documents were. He's going to be prosecuted for obstruction of justice because he instructed workers and his staff to move the boxes after he was told and issued a subpoena not to touch them, not to move them. I think he's going to be charged with obstruction of justice because his lawyers, on behalf of him, falsely certified that they had handed every document back when they didn't. So there's a lot. And I also think he's going to be prosecuted possibly under the Espionage Act for taking these documents. And if they have evidence, they might have gathered evidence that these documents were shown to people without security clearances, which they probably were. So I don't think it's if, I think it's when. I think, judging by the fact that we now know there's a grand jury currently serving over Mar-A-Lago, judging by the fact that it's pretty clear Trump is the target of the investigation and there's a grand jury currently weighing it. I mean, theoretically, the grand jury could decide to indict him, but then Merrick Garland takes his sweet ass time because he has to approve it. Merrick Garland is the one that would make the ultimate decision. So technically, the grand jury could indict him, and then it gets delayed because Merrick Garland is hemming and hawing on doing it. There is legitimate things that Merrick Garland would have to think about, because I do believe if and when Trump is prosecuted, there is going to be political violence, unfortunately. We're already seeing the increase in political violence. We're seeing the increase in political violence. You got lunatics, fascists like Marjorie Taylor Greene going out saying that the killings have started. The Democrats are coming to kill you. Trump himself is putting out tweets or whatever you call posts on Truth Social, death wish to Mitch McConnell. You have election deniers running and possibly winning governorships in Arizona, Secretary of State positions elsewhere. And there is more direct calls for political violence. And if their fearless cult leader is prosecuted, there might be violence. And the Attorney General has to weigh that. But ultimately, I think for every reason I've already stated, he's going to be prosecuted. I'd be happy to have egg on my face and say I was wrong. If he's not, I think he is going to be prosecuted for sure. Let me read Super Chat. Chris, $5. I've seen Status Coup's January 6th footage in multiple documentaries, everywhere from Vice to Frontline. This is why everyone needs to support on-the-ground journalism. Yes, we were fortunate that we were able to license it everywhere. I wish I knew what I know now then, because we badly undersold it. We should have sold the footage for a lot more than we did, but live and you learn. But yeah, that's what's going on. Let me make a couple announcements here. We're going to be back at 6 o'clock Eastern tonight with an important interview on what I think is one of the most important elections going on this November that you have not heard about. Definitely come back at 6 o'clock Eastern for this stream. It's a really important interview. It's a story that I care about a lot, and it's a very, very important, contest that I am almost positive you have not heard about. Also, just total transparency, because I try to keep it real. As you know, we were using the Call-In app. So we had a show on Call-In. We'll still do it here and there, but we had a 6-month contract with Call-In. We got $1,000 a month for doing Call-In shows from Call-In. That was really, really important for us. Extra revenue that we need to support on-the-ground reporting, to pay our freelancers, Tina, Kim Brown, Ron Placone, that obviously we're paying people to host for us. Every extra amount makes a big difference. So that $1,000 a month from Call-In really helped. Unfortunately, the contract's up. They're not renewing it. So anything you could do in support of us, we're hoping we can make up that gap. So anything you could do, we haven't really been pushing it lately, but I'm going to put the GoFundMe link here in the super chat. Obviously, it's tough times for people. So if you can't donate, totally understand. If you can, it would make a big difference. Right now, we're planning, making our plans for midterm election. We're going to be on the ground. There might also be a railroad strike. Even though Biden said it was averted, it has not been averted, and there might be a railroad strike in November. We would certainly want to be on the ground for that. There's more union drives we'd like to cover. There's more worker strikes that have been popping up. We want to be on the ground, but we don't have any money from the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley. Unlike most other independent outlets, we are not just in the studio. We go out and cover actual news on the ground, in the flesh. We speak with living, breathing, working people. So if you could support us, the GoFundMe, it would make a huge, huge difference. We've raised a lot of money over the years that we've had the GoFundMe. Let me show you here. So We've raised almost $186,000, but we started this in 2018, so we don't have $185,000. We've been spending the money as we go. So we do not, to be clear, we don't have that in the bank. We just never officially ended the GoFundMe. So that's what we've raised cumulatively. We don't just talk, we walk. So you've seen what we've spent your money on the ground reporting all over this country. Let me see if I have the map here to remind you. Do I not have the map? Bloody messy. Yeah, I don't have the map. But everywhere we've been all over this country over the last 4 years, we'd like to continue, but we need your support. So anything you could do in the GoFundMe would make a big difference. We've obviously expanded with Tina hosting a show once a week, with Kim Brown hosting a show once a week, Ron Placone co-hosting with Tina. Ron is also going to be hosting his own show once a week. Obviously, this takes money to pay everybody, obviously paying Colin, Dean behind the scenes. So please support us if you can. Losing $1,000 a month, it's a big hit. It's a big hit. No disrespect to Colin. We'll still use the app from time to time and take your calls. But we don't have any guaranteed money coming from Colin again. So anything you could do to help us kind of bridge that gap would make a big difference. So the GoFundMe, I'll put it one more time in the chat. And, maybe you can't donate now, but maybe save the link. And when you get a couple extra bucks, support us if you can. I want to play a clip for those that missed Tina's interview. Tina did a great interview with Andy Campbell from the Huffington Post, who just wrote a book on the Proud Boys. Here's a short clip from the interview, and you could watch the full interview from our live stream yesterday. Here's a short clip.
And and we've seen it not just in Portland, but everywhere where local law enforcement do turn their backs on the Trump supporters and fire, less lethals, not just tear gas, rubber bullets, whatnot, into BLM or anti-fascist protesters. I've seen that so many times.
The issue is that even today, following January 6th, you have law enforcement that doesn't know what to do when it finds out it has a Proud Boy within its ranks. Right. Last week in Chicago, they just announced that a Proud Boy officer won't be penalized because it's not illegal to be a Proud Boy, when again, this is an issue of discrimination. Functionally, in the street, a Proud Boy cop is no different than a Nazi cop, because they still believe that political violence against the left is in their rule set. They have white supremacist tenets. And so what is that? How is a black person going to see justice when a Proud Boy cop is on the other end of a gun? I mean, that's just not going to happen.
So that full interview is up on our live stream yesterday. We have been putting kind of marks on the live stream after the fact, so you could just scroll to find the time code where that interview starts. Definitely watch the whole thing in advance. There were things about the Proud Boys I did not know at all. So definitely check that out. Again, at 6 o'clock Eastern tonight, we're going to have another interview. I'm being kind of vague. It's on a very important election. I'm sure you have not seen any coverage of this election in national media. So definitely tune back at 6 o'clock Eastern. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please consider donating to our GoFundMe. Totally understand if you can't. If you can, it would make a big difference. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here at 6 o'clock Eastern. Bye-bye.